Hey, it's been a long time, right? I don't have any excuse for that. Today is Book Nook, and it's not that it's been a long time because I haven't been reading, but I was making other content. I just wasn't making Book Nook, which is a sham and a shame. So this was the first one that I read, and I actually haven't given it back to the library because I've been planning to talk about it, and have it. So it's Sula. Remember, I told you guys I was going to read this. And I'm just going to give a quick overview and then I'll read the passages and stuff like I always do. First, I just want to say that most of my review is going to be a spoiler. So if you haven't read it already and you're not looking for like somebody else to talk about it, then I'm going to give you 10 seconds to exit this video because I'm going to ruin it. So now everyone who is left, you have agreed that you don't mind that I'm going to be giving spoilers. Spoilers. I'm giving you ample warning that there will be spoilers. Do not get mad at me, please. I'm telling you now, there will be spoilers. So I think that this book is just so sad. It's beautifully written and it's sad. Like the tone of it is just sad looking. And it takes place in this place called the Bottom, which is actually at the very top of a hilly place. Like it's like rocky and things don't really grow easily, but all the black people were pushed up there and all the white people stayed in the valley. Because, you know, it was easier to live down there, and the black people had to stay up in the hill and do all their farming and live in their wooden houses. And that's where the book takes place. That's where Sula and Nell live. And Nell's mother, it starts off with Nell and Nell's background, which was really, I think it had everything to do with later. It was kind of like maybe a little bit of foreshadowing. I'm not entirely sure. Nell's grandmother was basically a prostitute, and so her mother, Nell's mother, hated her own mother. So she hated Nell's grandmother, her mother. And she, in the beginning of the book, like they're from way down south and they moved up to Medallion because she got married and had children or something, or had Nell. I don't think she had any other children. And Nell was really ashamed of her mother because at one point her mother, when they were going down for the for Nell's great grandmother's funeral, there's a white man that was giving the tickets, and he like pushes her, the mom, and then like the mom smiles at him, and then the black soldiers are looking at her like, how could you smile at that white man when he's treating you like this? And Nell's embarrassed because she's like, oh mother, I thought you weren't like one of those people. Now, oh God, now the soldiers are looking at you like that, and now they're looking at me, you know. So she starts being like, I'm attached to this woman, and now I'm embarrassed for her and myself. And then they get down there, and then the mom's mad at her mom because her mom was never there for her, and then she missed the grandmother. Grandmother asked her while she was still alive, but the grandmother died before she got there. She didn't know because, you know, it was 1920s and you can't call anybody, you can't tell a telegram she's on a train. So she's like pissing in bushes for no reason, and so she's mad because she's bougie now, even though she lives in Medallion, which is like this country farm town. And she's just upset. She's upset that her mother was never there for her. She's upset that she missed the grandmother before she could say goodbye. She's upset. They go back home. She's like, oh, thank God we left there. And Nell is like, oh, but I really liked her. I went on my first big trip. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be me. And then she meets Sula. And all of that changes. Nell is no longer concerned with being herself and being wonderful. She is completely absorbed in Sula. And like the whole book was really talking about how important women are to other women when it comes to relationships in life. To me, that's what the book felt like it was talking about. And so it weighs really heavily when they're no longer friends. Spoiler, when they're no longer friends, and Nell is kind of like, she's like lonely and lost, and she doesn't know what to do with herself anymore. And Sula, on the other hand, is over there doing something else. I'll get to that part later after I read some passages, but I'll get to that part because I felt conflicted with how everything went down. Like, I felt conflicted with the way they broke apart because I feel like Sula had a point in the end when she says something to Nell about their friendship falling apart. And I said, okay, she has a point, but at the same time, did she not see what she did to cause this? Like, Sula remained like she did nothing. And to me, I was like, no, she did a pretty big something. But in the context of what she says, to her, it was nothing, but she didn't draw enough boundaries, and it's because they didn't have any boundaries with each other when they were little, like none apparently. So she carried that into adulthood while Nell did not. Another thing I would like to talk about in this book, and spoiler again, is the fact that death happens so swiftly in this book. It's amazing how Toni Morrison manages to take something as heavy as death and slide it into this book over and over and over again. Everybody just dies. Everybody dies. It's just the way they die. It's like here one minute, gone the next. And I guess that's exactly how death works in real life as well. Like, you feel like you were just with somebody, you were just there with them, and then it's gone. That's how this book does it, except it's in some wild ways. Like, then we get into reading these passages, and these are just, you know how I do. I like to read you guys my points and then talk about them. Aline is basically distancing herself from everything that is her family and her past and starting a new life in Medallion with her daughter Nell. And so basically her house is like very, very rigid and very tight because her mother don't play that and her husband don't play that. And then you have Sula's house, which is a boarding house of everybody and anybody, and so Nell loves it over there. Sula loves it at Nell's house where it's quiet and she can just sit down and be still and not be bothered. Nell loves it at Sula's house where it's loud and lively and people are moving in and out and something's cooking and there's dirty dishes and dusty chairs, and skip all of those things and we're gonna get into the most major part. So then you've got Sula's mother, Hannah. She was asking her mother, Eva Peace. Everybody's last name is Peace, which in their house is anything but, apparently. So we got Hannah Peace that's asking her mother, Eva Peace, what did you love us? Because she was in the kitchen with her friends or whatever earlier talking about how they hate all their children but they love them, and Sula overhears her and is devastated, and she's like, I can't believe my mother doesn't even like me. So she runs up the stairs, you know, she's mad, and I don't think she ever let it go. So Hannah's down there with her mother talking about, hey, did you love us? And the mother gets irate and she's like, what? Basically, Hannah does not care, but Eva is just worked up now. Like, it doesn't got us started, Hannah. So Eva says, you gonna can them? Because she's watching her, you know, prepare green beans. And Hannah's like, no, they're for tonight. And Eva says, thought you was gonna can some. And then Hannah says, Uncle Paul ain't brought me none yet. A peck ain't enough to can. He said he got 2 bushels for me. And then Eve says, trifling. And she goes, oh, he all right. Sure, he all right. Everybody all right, except Mama. Mama, the only one ain't all right, because she didn't love us. Oh, Mama, oh, Mama, oh, Mama. You sitting there with your healthy ass self and ask me, did I love you? Them big old eyes in your head would be 2 holes full of maggots if I didn't. And I was just like, Mama. Like, she starts going off on her. And then the funniest part to me was what she said next, because Hannah's like, no, I ain't mean it. I was just asking. Like, you know, I'm just asking, like, if you played with us or whatever. And Eva like, play? Wasn't nobody playing in 1895? And that part was hilarious to me, because it was. And it's like, just because you got it good now, you think it was always this good? 1895 was killer, girl. Things was bad. Niggas was dying like flies. Stepping tall, ain't you? Uncle Paul gonna bring me 2 bushels. Yeah, and there's a melon downstairs, ain't there? And I bake every Saturday. And Shad brings fish on Friday. And they got pork barrel full of meal. And we float eggs in a crack of vinegar. And so, Mom, what you talking about? Now, I'm talking about 1895 when I sat in this house 5 days with you and Pearl and Plum and 3 beets. You snake-eyed, ungrateful hussy. And I was just like, man, what is going on? Like, she lost her mind just because her daughter was like, did you love us? And she was like, how dare you ask me about love you, hussy. She goes on like that. Like, she keep going. Like, she was like going. Like, she called her daughter at least 7 names. Like, and then Hannah was done with it. Like, after her mother just went off like that, Hannah was like, all right, left to go can the beans or to put the beans on the stove for tonight. And so I was just like, how's Hannah so unbothered? If my mother called me a snake-eyed, ungrateful hussy and then called me a heifer, I guess, I don't know. I was like, I'd be kind of upset, but like, that's this house. That's this house. That's Sula's house. Like, everybody just say anything however way they want. And I guess Sula was the most sensitive one in the house besides Eva, because obviously Eva was sensitive because Hannah asked her, did you love us? And she went off. Like, I'm gonna fast forward to after Nell gets married to a boy in town, and Sula walks out of her life. They're having the reception there, and Sula leaves. She leaves in the middle of the reception and then stays away for 10 years. She felt like she was alive again when her and Sula got back together. She said she felt like, she was laughing deeper than she'd ever laughed, and she was alive, and she felt whole and everything, and Sula was back, and it was so wonderful. And but there was a big flock of birds, and it was like ominous. And so that brings me to one of the things that they had said in here. They were talking about, because it was around the time where they had a plague of robins, and that's when Sula came back. In spite of their fear, they reacted to an oppressive oddity, or what they called evil days, with an acceptance that bordered on welcome. Such evil must be avoided, they felt, and precautions must naturally be taken to protect themselves from it. But they let it run its course, fulfill itself, and never invented ways to either alter it, to annihilate it, or to prevent its happening again. So also were they with people. And I thought that is exactly black people everywhere. That is exactly the mentality of black people and evil everywhere, that works for and against us, because of the simple fact that we are a people, in my opinion, that seem to like to let things naturally go the way they're supposed to go. Like, if it's happening, let it happen until it's done. But because everyone doesn't work that way, it often gets regarded as we don't like to make things happen, and we don't like to do things. But there's a lot of things that we just feel are like laws of nature that will take care of itself, especially just the way that people work, earth works, things work. Besides going to like a witch doctor to try to like figure out what you can do because you don't want like your children to die, it's more like you try not to get in the way of evil, or you avoid evil. Like, if you have an aunt that everyone knows is like a soul sucker, you don't try to take her life. You don't try to go near her and like cripple her or anything. You just stay as far away from her as possible and protect yourself. Like, you do things to protect yourself. There's lots of protection that happens. Anyway, so it says, Toni Morrison continues, and she said, what was taken by outsiders to be slackness, slovenliness, or even generosity was in fact a full recognition of the legitimacy of forces other than good ones. That's what I was talking about. They did not believe doctors could heal. For them, none had ever done so. And in this time, it's 1937. And for a fact that doctors in America were not healing these people unless it was a black doctor. And where they lived in this town, there were no black doctors. So, you can do the math. They did not believe death was accidental. Life might be, but death was deliberate. Again, very Cameroonian. Like, no one ever just dies. They've been witched. They've been guilt. They've been sold. Okay, so then they did not believe nature was ever askew, only inconvenient. That is also another thing. Like, things happen in nature because they happen in nature, and it's not out of place. It's just what nature is doing. You might not like it, it might not fit with what you wanted to happen that day, but nature decided that's what was gonna happen, so it happened, and you have to deal with it accordingly. Yeah, that's the mindset of the people. So when the robins plagued the town, everyone knew something was coming, but they weren't going to do anything about it because they needed to let it run its course, but they also needed to protect themselves. And when they figured out that omen was bringing Sula, they didn't know Sula was a bad thing until things started happening. Things got a little sticky. That's why I'm trying not to curse. She fights with her grandma or whatever, and when she gets into it with her grandma like that, I started being like, when Toni Morrison wrote this character, did she really write her as kind of like a bit of walking evil? But not in a way that people think of evil, because I think that even evil has a bit of good in it. And so Sula had her soft, but she was just all the culmination of life and her own temperament of being very, very rash when she felt like she was provoked. Like in the very beginning when they get accosted by these Irish boys that decide to pick on little black girls and do Lord knows what with them after school. And she stops and cuts off her own finger and starts threatening them like, if I do this to myself, well, you know what I'll do to you? And, you know, they're like, oh, she's crazy. Like little things like that. And she throws that boy in the lake because she's spinning him around. But she liked that little boy. So it's just, so that was an accident to her. But then by then she's a murderer. So, you know, you wonder, was all this turmoil on her? She's soft, but then she's just so, I don't know how to explain her. And maybe that was the whole point. She's like a storm. She's like a storm, and Nell got swept up in it, and they were basically one because Nell wasn't exactly, like she was right there. When all this stuff is happening with Sula, she's right there watching it happen. So, I mean, it's not, she never, like, nothing ever, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but like when Toni Morrison was writing Sula's character, I wonder what she had in mind. Like, did she have someone who was just free of any concept of binds, you know? Like she was, Sula's whole thing was being free in this world and being hers and herself, like the thing that Nell wanted to be in the very beginning of this book. And Sula's trying, she's not trying, she's hers and herself. She doesn't belong to anyone, no one, not her grandmother, not her mother, no man, nothing. Sula is Sula's, and that's how she lives, and it just drives people crazy. And Nell, at one point as a child, she had looked in the mirror and said she was her, she was me, she's nobody's daughter, nothing, she's just her, and she wanted to be that. And then as time went on, she got laden with all these labels. She stayed being someone's daughter, then she was someone's wife, then she was somebody's mom, she was somebody's best friend. She had lived her life through labels, and that's something Sula never did except through Nell. So that was interesting. That's Sula. After she fight her grandmother, she go over to Nell house and talk with her, and they laughing, and then Nell's husband comes home. Okay, this is what she was saying. She was talking about how everyone loves black men, and then this is what she says, which I'll just leave with you to think about on your own. So Sula's telling Jude, that's Nell's husband, she's telling him, I don't know what all this fuss is about, everybody loves black men. And Jude is like, what? How can you say that to me? This and third, I'm out here struggling. And Sula's like smiling, and she's like, whatever. And she's like, listen, she's like, I mean, I don't know what the fuss is about. I mean, everything in this world loves you. White men love you. They spend so much time worrying about your penis, they forget their own. The only thing they want to do is cut off a nigga's privates. If that ain't love and respect, I don't know what is. And white women, they chase you all to every corner of the earth, feel for you under every bed. I knew a white woman wouldn't leave the house after 6 o'clock for fear one of you would snatch her. Now ain't that love? They think rape soon as they see you, and if they don't get the rape they looking for, they scream it anyway, just so the search won't be in vain. Colored women worry themselves into bad health just trying to hang on to your cuffs. Even little children, white and black, boys and girls, spend all their childhood eating their hearts out because they think you don't love them. And if that ain't enough, you love yourselves. Nothing in this world loves a black man more than another black man. You hear of solitary white men, but niggas can't stay away from one another a whole day. So it looks to me like you the envy of the world. Then he's like, a funny woman, he thought. Not that bad looking, but he could see why she wasn't married. She stirred a man's mind, maybe, but not his body. When Miss Morrison wrote that, I knew that Jude was going to have an affair. And he did. He cheats on his wife, Nell, with her best friend in the entire universe, Sula. And Sula, it's not like she wasn't there. She was there. She takes Jude and rolls around on Nell's bedroom floor. Like, they're on Nell's bedroom floor, and Nell walks in on them, on Sula and her husband, making out on the floor. And I was just like, Sula, but you as my best friend. But that's what I was talking about way earlier at the beginning of this video, where apparently as children, they didn't have any boundaries. They used to share boyfriends all the time and compare. That's what Sula brings up later. And Nell is like, this was my husband, not a play boyfriend. And Sula's just like, what is this? And Nell was like, we were the best of friends. How could you do this to me? And Sula's like, if we were such good friends, why couldn't you just get over it? And I was like, y'all are both crazy. I understand. You're mad that she couldn't get over that she slept with her husband because y'all shared boys before. Y'all never had to not share. Y'all do everything together. But there is a boundary that Nell has grown into that Sula, again, does not live by other people's boundaries anymore because she is her own. She's herself. She took herself out of every context that the world put her in. And that included other people's boundaries, I guess, which I feel like that's the moment it gets too far. You can take yourself out of any context that other people put you in, but the minute it affects someone else's boundaries, you've crossed a line. Like, that's the line you don't cross. I feel like she was wrong, but at the same time, throwing away all their friendship, I can understand they'd be really sore about it, but throwing away all your friendship, like that was the one thing you had in this world. She couldn't even look her in the face, which I also understand, because what is it that you were going to say to someone who you love that man and then he's rolling around on the floor? Like, you don't know how to feel. You're just like, wow. The book was written in the 70s about the 1930s. Even though in the prologue she was saying that she wasn't going to be concerned with the politics of how people felt she was portraying black people or white people, anybody in general. She was saying how, you know, when her critics of The Bluest Eye were talking about how, this was in the prologue, she was talking about she was writing this book thinking about the reviews she got, and if they were good, it was because they felt like it was true to them, and if it was bad, they felt like it wasn't true to them, like it didn't represent anything that they knew, and this, that, and third, and people weren't like that, and black people aren't like this, or if it was good, black people are just like this. And I feel like my review was leaning toward, it wasn't so much I'm saying the book was good because black people are like this, or anyone's like this, or life is like this, because I don't know anything about the 1930s black people. Okay, I wasn't alive and nobody was here, so it's just, I'm just going by how she wrote this book. Kind of mirrors psychology of people today and people in Cameroon. And so, like, people of my mother's generation, like I feel like a lot of the things mirror that, and that's just something that I noticed. It wasn't that the book was good or bad because of it. It was just an aspect of the book that I'm talking about, so please don't misunderstand. The book is good on its own because it is a well-written story, because it's about these two girls, and to me, it was about the bond that women can have with each other, and the fact that nothing can really break it except one another, but that's something that weighs heavily on your spirit forever. Like, there's nothing stronger than a bond between women, and the whole book is centered around women. The women are the main characters of the story. So that is my biggest, that's why I love the book, because the whole book is centered around the relationships between all these different women, dysfunctional or not. They were all kind of dysfunctional. But, like, I feel like in real life, it's not so much dysfunctional as it is, I should say, layered. They're layered and they're circumstantial because a lot of different things happen, and things sometimes were more similar than others. And that's just the way things were. Like, I feel like, you know, Nell's mother didn't like Sula's house because it reminded her of her own upbringing, with her mother dragging her here and there, and she had to go stay with her grandmother because her mother was all over town. It was just like Sula. Nell's mother was essentially Sula, who refused to fit into the mold that society would put her in, but Nell's mother bent right into that mold and stayed there. Sula kind of was in the same predicament and decided she wasn't going to stay in any mold anyone was going to put her in, and that drove everyone crazy, including Nell. Oh, I just want to talk about Ajax. Sula, the one thing Sula attaches to in this world besides Nell and herself is a man named Ajax. And he embodies that butter smooth talking man that slides right into your life and does nothing but good to you. And then he leaves you. Gone. 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 It was so sad. Rocked her socks. That man rocked Sula's socks and then left. He left with her socks. He didn't leave with anything. He didn't leave with a thing. He came to her with everything. He would bring her gifts and bring her this and bring her that and never left with a thing. The only thing he ended up leaving behind was his identification card. That was the only thing. And that's when she realized she didn't even know his real name. And she was all wrapped up in him. And the whole reason why he left her was because suddenly she was wrapped up in him. He was attracted to her because she was like wind, you know? Couldn't be caught by anything. Wasn't stopped by anything. And then, so he said, I like that, because he felt like he was always getting pinned down. And the only one he was attached to in this world was his mother. Like, that was the only woman he could think was like somebody he would have loyalty to for the rest of his days. So he was attracted to Sula because she was like him. They were both just these like free spirits. And so when Sula gets too wrapped up in him and he recognizes the signs that, uh-oh, this girl looks like she's trying to start nesting with me, he loved her down and got out of there. It was just like, it was a blow, because I was like, dang. Then she gets sick. And you know how she got sick. Anyway, so that's the book Sula. It was devastating at the very end. Like, you know, she goes, at the very end, Sula goes to talk to, you know what, I'll leave the very end to you. I've already spoiled enough of the book. I'll at least leave you with the ending. And I just feel like the whole book was really devastating, and it impressed on me the importance of women to each other and how we can really just make or break one another. Whether we mean to or not. And, my hair is wild. I've been flinging all over the place. But that's how this book made me feel. I feel, after this book, I was just like, why do I feel like this? Like, I felt so despaired. Like, I felt like I was in mourning for every woman friendship that I've ever lost. Oh, God. Life, man. Life and friends. Like, this is why, I don't know how to feel. You guys, somebody help me. And that's the whole book. I was gonna read some more things. So I'll just read this one last thing and then I'll call it a day. There was no creature so ungodly as to make them destroy it. They could kill easily if provoked to anger, but not by design, which explained why they could not mob kill anyone. To do so was not only unnatural, it was undignified. The presence of evil was something to be first recognized, then dealt with, survived, outwitted, triumphed over.